quiet, mist-laden morning, Lance Corporal Liam Carter stepped from the turnstiles into the subway station, his dress blues crisp and immaculate despite the muted bustle around him, the soft clang of distant trains echoing through the tiled corridors. The weight of his rucksack and rifle case pressed heavily against his back, but it was the memory of his fallen comrade that felt even more burdensome. Specialist Ramirez, always first to volunteer for a mission, gone now after a training accident. That still seemed impossible. Today was Liam's first day back on duty following a 2-day bereavement leave, and every footstep he took resonated with both resolve and grief. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Liam descended the concrete steps to the platform, glancing at his watch. It read 6:12 a.m. He had less than an hour to reach the base for his 7 a.m. muster. The station was nearly deserted, a stark contrast to the crowded commute he'd seen before leave. Aside from the distant drip of a poorly sealed pipe, only 3 figures populated the platform. A commuter hunched over his phone, eyes glazed, a man with a lined face and denim jacket standing rigidly near the yellow safety line, and a young girl in a candy-colored school uniform, her backpack strap slipping down her tiny shoulders as if the bag were nearly too big to carry. Liam's marine instincts twitched. The man's hand rested firmly on the girl's shoulder, not in a gentle, guiding manner, but with a grip that looked almost possessive. The little girl, no older than 6, pressed herself against the wall, her eyes darting around as if searching for an escape. Liam offered a soldier's nod. "Morning," he said, voice steady, disciplined. The man returned the greeting with a practiced smile. "Good morning," he replied, voice warm but rehearsed. "Walking my daughter to school." Liam nodded once. "Must be early start for little ones nowadays." He strode closer, machinery of suspicion clicking into place. The girl's knuckles whitened around the edge of her uniform skirt. Liam's gut tightened. He forced himself to look away, chastising his thoughts. "Kids get nervous." He set his rifle case on the bench and retrieved a handful of coins from his pocket, heading to the vending machine. The stale aroma of coffee and cheap plastic filled his nostrils as he waited for the can to clink down. In that moment, the girl slipped from the man's side and darted toward Liam, her tiny hand gripping his forearm. She turned her face up to him, eyes wide, brimming with silent panic. Liam froze, heart pounding. He glanced back at the man who was already jogging over, expression contrite. "Sorry," the man murmured, voice strained. "She's just anxious about her first day." He laid a hand on the girl's shoulder and gently pried her fingers from Liam's arm. Liam offered the girl his coffee. "Want a sip? It'll steady your nerves." He extended the can awkwardly. The man's lips compressed into a polite line. "That's very kind, but no thank you. Right, Karina?" He used the girl's name as if reciting a lesson they'd taught her in etiquette. The child nodded, tear tracks glistening on her cheeks, and the man guided her back toward the platform's edge. Karina's shoulders shook with quiet sobs. As the train rumbled in, headlights cutting through the station's shadows, Liam retrieved his rifle case, shoving the last of his coins into his pocket. The man addressed him, tone shifting to casual curiosity. "So, you in the service?" Liam braced himself, standing at attention despite the cramped subway car. 3 years, sir. Enlisted right after high school." The man's eyes flicked between Liam's insignia and Karina, a calculating look that set Liam's nerves on edge. Must be tough, losing someone close. At the mention of loss, Liam's chest tightened. He swallowed, nodding. "It is. You learn life's delicate." His voice softened with the memory of Ramirez's youthful grin. The man inclined his head, then gently lifted Karina's chin, smiling as if to reassure himself all was well. Karina trembled, but fixed her gaze on Liam, as though pleading for rescue. The train screeched to a halt. Doors slid open. Liam hesitated only a moment before signaling to Karina. "Are you okay? I can help you if you need." His marine bearing filled the small space, steady and powerful. The man shot Liam a bland smile. Thank you, but she'll be fine. He tucked a lock of Karina's hair behind her ear. School's just down the block. The doors closed, and as the train lurched forward, Liam watched them disappear into the distance. Beneath his marine discipline, anger and concern swirled. He pressed his palm against the window, his breath fogging the glass. He promised himself he would follow, speak up, whatever it took to ensure the little girl's safety, because a Marine's duty doesn't end on the battlefield. Whether on base or in a routine morning commute, protecting the innocent is etched into his very soul, and Liam Carter would see this mission through to its dark, surprising conclusion. On a quiet, mist-softened morning, Lance Corporal Liam Carter stepped through the turnstiles into the subway station, his dress blues crisp and immaculate, the polished brass of his rank catching the flickering fluorescent light. The weight of his rucksack pressed into his shoulders, but even heavier was the burden in his heart, the recent loss of Specialist Ramirez, taken too soon in a training accident. Today was his first day back on duty after 2 days of bereavement leave, and every echo of his boots on the concrete stairs reminded him of the fragility of life, even for those sworn to protect it. At 6:15 a.m., the platform was nearly deserted. Aside from the distant drip of a leaking pipe, only 3 commuters waited. A man hunched over a smartphone, another man with a weathered face and denim jacket, and a small blonde girl in a candy-colored school uniform whose oversized backpack threatened to swallow her. The second man's hand lay heavily on the child's shoulder, his grip more possessive than reassuring. Though they shared an unremarkable greeting, Liam's crisp, "Good morning," countered by the man's equally practiced "morning," something in the child's trembling frame and wide, frightened eyes set Liam's marine instincts on edge. He moved to fetch a coffee from a nearby vending machine, the familiar clink of coins a welcome distraction. But even there, the little girl couldn't stay by her guardian's side. She slipped away and gripped Liam's forearm, her small voice a silent plea. Liam's heart thudded painfully against his ribs as the man returned, apologetic, anxious, calling the girl Karina in a soothing tone that felt too measured. Liam offered the can of coffee as if to calm her nerves, but the man gently, firmly led her back, insisting she was merely nervous about her first day of school. Tears shimmered on Karina's cheeks as they stepped behind the safety line, and when the lights of the approaching train cast long shadows across the platform, Liam watched them board through a veil of worry. He entered through a different door, telling himself he was overreacting. As the train lurched forward, Liam settled into a seat near the rear, pulling out his phone to scroll through the morning headlines. The messy routine grounded him until a faint whisper pierced the steady rumble of the tracks. "Stop, stop." It was so soft, he almost missed it. Instantly alert, he pocketed his phone and rose. The subway's open gangways allowed him to slip from car to car without obstruction, each step heightening his senses. The plea came again, trembling and desperate, and he was certain it sounded from the next car. There, under the harsh glow of fluorescent bulbs, sat the same pair, the denim-jacketed man and Karina. They were alone in this section, their earlier exchange now tinged with something predatory. The man's hand gripped the girl's leg too tightly. He oscillated between tender strokes and sudden tugs that forced Karina back into his side. She shrank away repeatedly, only to be yanked back, her small body quivering. Recognizing the danger, Liam moved to a row ahead, careful not to draw attention, his eyes never leaving them. Clearing his throat softly, he announced his presence. The man's face flickered with anger before corralling back into an apologetic mask. "Oh, there you are again, Lance Corporal," he said with forced warmth. "Sorry, my daughter's restless." Karina flinched as her name left his lips. Liam offered, "Is there anything I can do to help?" But the man's grip tightened, and he brushed off the offer. Seizing a distraction, Liam pretended to spot a discarded newspaper and made a show of picking it up, angling his approach to get a closer look at Karina's face. The terror etched there left no doubt in his mind. This was no nervous child. Retreating back through the gangway, Liam returned to his original seat, heart pounding with certainty. He weighed his options, intervene directly and risk a confrontation, or call for backup. Memories of battlefield decisions flickered through his mind, when hesitation could mean disaster. With trembling fingers, he dialed 911, unfolding the newspaper to hide the movement. "This is Lance Corporal Liam Carter," he said when the dispatcher answered, his voice low, precise, honed by years of training. "I need to report a possible child abduction in progress." He described the suspect's build and clothing, Karina's uniform and age, the train's line and the next stops, emphasizing the girl's distress. "We need an undercover unit," he concluded, scanning the car to ensure he wasn't followed. The dispatcher's voice hesitated, asking if he was certain. Liam's gaze locked onto the man's back through the newspaper's frame. In that moment, he knew there was no turning back. A Marine's duty to defend the helpless ran as deep as blood in his veins, whether under fire in a distant desert or in the fluorescent-lit belly of a city subway. Ahead lay a moral crucible, one that would test his resolve and resourcefulness far beyond any drill he had ever endured. Lance Corporal Liam Carter paused at the edge of the school's wrought iron gate, his pulse hammering as the crisp morning air filled his lungs. The quiet courtyard lay nearly deserted, the playground equipment still, the flagpole unstaffed, and only the distant murmur of a traffic light breaking the silence. He checked his watch. 6:48 a.m. 12 minutes until his 7:0 muster. Every fiber of his Marine training screamed that a child was in imminent danger, that his momentary doubts had been shattered by the silent signal she'd given him just seconds before the doors closed. Yet the weight of protocol and the fear of an unexamined accusation pressed on him almost as heavily as the rucksack on his back. He took a steadying breath, remembering Ramirez's laughter, his brother in arms whose absence had already cost him too much trust in his own judgment. Stepping forward, Liam told himself that failing to act would haunt him far more than being late. He skirted the perimeter of the courtyard, hands poised at his sides, his uniform blending awkwardly into casual attire as early morning parents trickled past on their way to work. Every step brought him closer to where he'd last glimpsed the little girl framed in a classroom window, her silhouette flickering behind partially drawn curtains. The man, no father, had exited alone. And now, Liam followed the faint echo of small footsteps merging with the hum of the city. He ducked behind a parked sedan, drawing on his fieldcraft instincts to remain unseen while he scouted the school's entrance. 2 doors led inside, one marked staff only, the other a heavy wooden portal with a small glass panel. He heard a muffled sob from within, followed by a single, stifled whisper, "Help me." Liam's hand went instantly to the handle, twisting it with decisive force. The door gave way with a soft creak, spilling him into a dimly lit hallway, lined with lockers and peeling paint. The sobbing grew louder, echoing down the corridor. He advanced with measured caution, eyes scanning for any sign of the man. At a T-junction, he glimpsed movement, a flash of blonde hair disappearing around the corner. He moved after it in one fluid motion, heart pounding, senses ignited by adrenaline and duty entwined. Rounding the corner, he found her pressed against a classroom door, tiny shoulders shaking, face streaked with tears. The man loomed behind her, one hand covering her mouth while the other clutched her arm. His eyes were wild when they met Liam's, a predator caught in the harsh glare of truth. "Marine," Liam said, voice low and controlled. "Release her now." His stance was unwavering, combat ready, every muscle poised. The man froze, his lips twisting into a sneer before he let go. Karina collapsed into Liam's arms, relief flooding her little body. Liam scooped her up as gently as his gear allowed, placing himself between her and the fleeing suspect. With his free hand, he activated the call on his secure line, dispatching coordinates to a local detective unit while keeping his other arm around the trembling child. Within moments, uniformed officers and a school resource officer swarmed the hallway, handcuffing the man and ushering Karina to safety. Outside, the morning sun had climbed higher, illuminating the scene in stark clarity. Liam knelt beside Karina on the steps, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "You're safe now," he murmured, voice thick with emotion, his marine calm giving way to genuine tenderness. She nodded, clutching his shirt. In the distance, the school's principal and Karina's frantic mother appeared, rushing toward them as tears of gratitude replaced fear. Liam straightened, exhaustion washing over him, but his pain was tempered by purpose fulfilled. He glanced down at Karina and then up at his watch, 6:55 a.m. He was 5 minutes late. He allowed himself a small, wry smile. Some duties transcend orders, some responsibilities exist beyond the call of duty, and this Marine's heart had answered another call, one that mattered more than any schedule. As he escorted Karina into her mother's arms, Liam felt the weight of friendship lost ease ever so slightly, replaced by the knowledge that he had protected the innocent once more. On base or off, Marine always first to serve. Miss Casey slid the folder across her desk toward Liam, her fingers brushing the laminated edge as if she'd done this 100 times before. "These are Karina's recent assignments," she explained, voice low enough that only the three of them could hear. "Her handwriting has changed, her letters are shaky, and her drawings have taken on darker themes. I'm concerned." She tapped the folder. Liam nodded, heart hammering, and slid into a nearby desk so that Karina's shoulder brushed against his arm. The classroom smelled faintly of chalk and old carpeting, the late morning sun laying warm bars of light across the rows of empty chairs. He opened the folder, feigning casual interest, and scanned the worksheets. Once bright illustrations of sunshine and playgrounds now showed girls hiding behind trees, their faces twisted in fear. Essays about "my happy family" had been crossed out, replaced with jagged scrawl reading, "I want help." It was subtle enough that a parent might dismiss it as ordinary childhood angst, but to Liam's trained eye, it spoke volumes. He looked at Karina, recalling how stiff and unresponsive her body had been on the train, how her eyes had brimmed with terror. "Miss Casey," he said, voice steady despite the adrenaline in his veins. "These are troubling indeed. I think we need to contact her mother immediately." He forced concern into every syllable. Miss Casey bit her lip, glancing at Karina, whose wide eyes flickered from the papers to Liam's uniform sleeve. "I've called her twice this morning and again last night," she replied softly. "Her phone goes straight to voicemail." She frowned and reached for her own cell. "I can try again, but perhaps the police should be involved." She looked expectantly at Liam, whose heart slid into his boots. He had no authority here, only his gut and his oath. "You're right," he agreed, closing the folder with a decisive snap. Let me help." He stood, stepping into a protective stance beside Karina. "Officer Carter, military police," he said, improvising. "I'll secure the perimeter. Why don't you continue trying her mother, and I'll see if anyone saw Mr. Peterson come back?" Miss Casey nodded gratefully. "Thank you." She headed toward the door, pulling it closed behind her. Liam waited until her footsteps faded, then crouched next to Karina. His voice softened, low and confident. "Karina, I'm here to keep you safe. Can you tell me where he took you after school yesterday?" The girl swallowed, eyes large in her pale face. "He told me to go to the library," she whispered, voice quavering. "He said my mom would pick me up, but she never did." Her lips trembled as she folded her hands in her lap. "He made me sit in the dark corner while he talked on his phone." Liam's chest tightened at the thought of her alone in a locked room. "And then?" he pressed gently. She glanced at the door, as if hoping the man might burst back through. "Then he gave me this," she said, pulling a folded dollar bill from her pocket. "He said it was for being good," and her small voice cracked on the word good. but I was scared. Tears welled in her eyes. Liam slid a hand behind her back, offering a silent anchor. "You did the right thing telling me," he assured her. "I promise I'll get you home to your mother." He reached into his pocket for the secure radio he'd pocketed earlier and tapped the call button. "This is CPL Carter in room 102, he whispered into the receiver. "Suspect fled on foot toward Elm Street. Victim secured. Request immediate backup." He tucked the radio away and stood, offering Karina his hand. "Come on," he said. "We need to find a safe place." As they stepped into the hallway, Liam pivoted to peer down the corridor. A lone custodian rounded the corner with a mop bucket, humming softly. "Excuse me," Liam called, voice firm but kind. "Could you direct me to the main office? I need to wait there for my mother." The custodian blinked, taken aback by the uniform, but nodded. "Second door on the left," he said, pointing. "She's expecting you?" Liam offered a tight smile. "Yes, she is. Thank you." He led Karina toward the office, each step measured, every sense on high alert. The main office was empty, except for a single computer station. Liam guided Karina behind the counter and closed the door, flipping the lock. He crouched beside her again. "You're safe now," he said, voice soft. Karina nodded, clutching the dollar bill like a talisman. Liam pulled a fresh notepad from his pocket and scribbled his name and the time at the top of the page, 6:58 a.m., then passed it to her. "If you ever need help," he told her, "just show this to any adult in uniform or with an ID badge, and they'll know to call me." She pressed it to her chest, eyes shining with relief. Before he could say another word, the office door burst open and a pair of uniformed officers flooded in, guns holstered, but hands ready. The lead detective, flinty and composed, stepped forward, nodding at Liam. "CPL Carter?" he asked. Liam rose, straightening his uniform. "Yes, sir." The detective glanced at Karina, then at Liam's confident stance. "Good work. We've got the suspect in custody outside." He looked down at his watch. "You're late for your report." Liam allowed himself a weary half-smile. "Sir, I'm a Marine." "Protecting the innocent doesn't come with a punch card." The detective offered a respectful nod, and together they escorted Karina toward her mother, who arrived in a flurry of tears and apologies. Liam lingered only long enough to ensure the reunion, then turned and made for the door. His shirt was rumpled, his morning report was missed, and his uniform bore the faint imprint of Karina's small hand, but in his chest beat the steady assurance that he had done his duty. On that ordinary school morning, off-duty Marine Liam Carter had answered the highest call, to safeguard a child in need. With the timeline of the unsettling behavior he'd witnessed on the subway fresh in his mind, Liam leaned forward as Miss Casey opened the folder and spread its contents across her desk, a collection of Karina's artwork and a binder of her recent grades. "Karina has always excelled academically and thrived creatively," Miss Casey began, voice low and concerned. "Her report card from last term shows straight A's in all core subjects, but over the past 2 weeks, I've noticed a drastic shift in her drawings." Liam studied the stack. The first dozen sketches were the bright, carefree scenes one would expect. From a first grader, sunny skies, smiling stick figure families, rainbows arcing over flower-dotted fields. Yet, as he worked through the set, the colors faded to grays and blacks. In the later pieces, looming shadowy silhouettes encroached on tiny figures, their faces contorted in fear. Sometimes a tall, imposing male form appeared behind a small blonde girl, an image that repeated itself with unnerving consistency. "Changes like this," Miss Casey said softly, "often signal that a child is experiencing anxiety or trauma." She glanced toward Karina, who hovered just inside the doorway with her backpack clutched to her chest, eyes wide and still glistening with unshed tears. Liam's chest tightened with protective urgency. "I appreciate you bringing this to my attention," Liam said, keeping his tone measured. "I'll discuss it with our mother right away." Inside, though, his mind raced. The truth was far more sinister than schoolyard fears, and revealing everything here could re-traumatize Karina or jeopardize the investigation before it even began. "For now, I'd like a moment alone with her," he added. Miss Casey nodded, concern deepening her expression, and exited to give them space. Liam followed Karina through the door and out into the deserted playground, where the morning sun cast long shadows across the monkey bars and swings. She darted under the dome of the climbing frame, seeking the small, sheltered haven where she'd hidden before. Liam sat on the cool pavement nearby, leaning back against the metal support beam. "Karina," he said gently, "I know you're frightened, but I'm here to help. I saw your 'help me' signal on the train. Can you tell me the truth about the man who brought you here today? Is he the same person in your drawings?" For a long moment, Karina stared at the ground, her small shoulders quivering. Finally, in a whisper that trembled with fear, she nodded. "He's scary," she said, voice breaking. "He isn't my dad, but he told me he was. My real dad. He died. And this man has been waiting at the subway every morning for weeks. He talks to me, tries to hug me, and if I don't say he's my dad, he hurts me." Liam's anger flared, but he kept his expression calm, offering reassurance. "You're very brave for telling me that. Can you tell me more about what he does?" Karina swallowed, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Yesterday, he said he wanted me to go home with him when school ended. I said I would go today because I was too scared to say no right away. He told me not to tell my mom, that she'd be angry at me because I'd found my second daddy. I didn't know what else to do." Liam took a slow breath, fighting back his own surge of emotion. He reached out and gently squeezed her hand. "Karina, you did nothing wrong. People like him, tricky, dangerous people, use lies to scare kids into obeying. But I promise you, he will never hurt you again." He shifted to a more practical tone. "Now, I need to understand your home situation. Where is your mother in all of this?" The girl hiccuped through her sobs. "Mom's always working. She drops me at the subway at 6 every morning because she has an early shift and can't bring me to school herself. I get here so early, and sometimes I wait alone because no one else is here yet." Her voice wavered with each word. "She doesn't know about him because he told me not to tell her. He said she'd get mad at me, and I was too scared." Liam's heart ached at the vulnerability in her confession. He knelt beside her, voice soft but firm. "You did exactly the right thing by telling me. I'm going to make sure your mother knows, and we'll keep you safe. You'll never have to face him again." Karina looked up at him, her big blue eyes now reflecting a glimmer of hope. In that moment, the last pieces of the puzzle clicked into place. The persistent presence at the station, the sinister drawings, her stolen innocence. His military training had guided him this far, but now it was his compassion that would see the mission through. Liam stood and offered Karina his hand. "Come on," he said, voice gentle. "Let's get you back to your mom." As they made their way toward the school entrance, Liam's mind raced with plans, calling Child Protective Services, ensuring the man was arrested, and standing by Karina's side until her mother could arrive. He felt the weight of his uniform, once a symbol of duty in far-flung lands, now a promise to protect the most innocent among them. With Karina's trembling hand in his, Lance Corporal Liam Carter resolved that whatever it took, whether confronting the man who'd preyed on her or breaking the news to her mother, he would not fail this little girl. His watch showed 7:12 a.m., and though he was late for his report, he knew he'd answered a higher call, the sacred duty to safeguard a child in peril. Smile as he gently brushed a stray lock of hair from her forehead. "They're almost here, Karina. You did everything right." His voice was calm, a steady anchor in the swirl of sirens growing louder beyond the classroom walls. She nodded against his shoulder, small body relaxing just a fraction. Across the hallway, Miss Casey stood at the open office door, her phone pressed to her ear as she spoke urgently to the principal. Yes, lockdown procedures now. All exterior doors secured. No one in or out until the police arrive. Her authoritative tone filled the empty school corridor. Moments later, the first patrol car swept around the corner, blue lights dancing across the pavement. Liam rose, moving to position himself between the classroom door and the hallway, ensuring Karina remained shielded from any sight of the suspect's approach. A uniformed officer stepped into the room, helmet clipped to his belt, eyes swept the scene, and then settled on Karina. "Miss Carter?" he asked, voice gentle. "Are you okay?" Karina peered up at Liam, whose nod told her it was safe. She managed a shy, "Yes, sir." The officer turned to Liam. "Corporal Carter, I presume?" "Lance Corporal," Liam corrected, voice soft. "Thank you for coming so quickly." The officer offered a curt nod. "We've got a bolo on Peterson. He was spotted near Elm Street heading this way. Detective Harper is en route with backup." He knelt beside Karina. "Can you tell me again what happened?" Karina repeated her story in halting sentences, and the officer scribbled notes. Meanwhile, the door to the hallway swung open and Detective Harper strode in, badge gleaming. He gave Liam a respectful nod. "I've apprehended the suspect just outside the building. He's in the cruiser now." Relief flooded through Liam, and he allowed himself a brief smile. Across the room, Karina's shoulders slumped with relief. Detective Harper approached Karina's side. "You're very brave," he said. "Your help kept you safe." Karina glanced at Liam, and then, with all the courage she could muster, slipped from his grasp and wrapped her arms tightly around his waist. Liam knelt, returning her hug, his uniform crumpling where she pressed into him. Miss Casey entered, relief etched on her face. She placed a comforting hand on Karina's other shoulder. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. Then she turned to Liam and the detective. "What can I do now?" Detective Harper answered. "We'll need Karina's mother here to make a full statement and for standard processing. Can you help us arrange that?" Miss Casey's fingers flew over her phone. "I've got her work number. She's on site in the cafeteria for breakfast volunteer duty. I'll bring her right away." Liam rose and offered Karina his hand. "How about we wait for your mom in the office? It's more comfortable." Karina nodded, clutching the little folder he'd given her. They walked together toward the main office, the hush of the school punctuated only by muffled radio chatter and the distant wail of sirens fading as the suspect was driven away. Once inside the office, Karina settled into a chair behind the counter, her legs swinging. Liam pulled another chair alongside her and sat down, ever vigilant. He removed his cover and ran a hand through his hair, voice low when he spoke next. "You're safe now, Karina. No one's going to hurt you ever again." She managed a small, grateful smile. "Thank you," she whispered. Liam nodded, eyes softening. "And your mom isn't angry. She's going to be so proud of how brave you've been." As they waited, the door opened and Karina's mother rushed in, eyes wide with alarm that melted into tears when she saw her daughter safe. She hurried forward, enveloping Karina in a fierce hug, and then looked up at Liam in astonishment and gratitude. Liam stood, dipping into a crisp salute despite himself. "Ma'am, I'm Lance Corporal Liam Carter. I just wanted to make sure your daughter stayed safe this morning." Karina's mother sobbed. "I don't know how to thank you." Liam simply offered a small, respectful nod. "Just glad she's all right." In that moment, as mother and daughter clung together and the school office buzzed with relieved professionals, Liam Carter felt the weight of missed report times and military protocol lift. He'd answered the highest call to protect an innocent life, whether in a distant combat zone or a quiet elementary school on a misty morning. And for Karina, that was the greatest comfort he could ever give. Detective Harper's voice was low but urgent as she approached Liam, her notepad in hand. "Corporal Carter, we've got a problem and some answers. We found multiple sets of identification on him. Mateo Alvarez, Carlos Moreno, Ahmed Saeed. She flipped through her notes. None of those are his real name, of course. All forged. His real identity is still unknown, but these aliases tell us he's been using them to prey on children in at least 3 different jurisdictions. Liam absorbed the news in silence, picturing Karina's terrified face and Emily's quivering lips. "He's been moving around," he said bluntly. "We need to know how many kids he's approached, how many families he's terrorized." Harper met his gaze. "I've already radioed local precincts along the train line. They're pulling surveillance footage from every station he could have passed through in the past month. We'll get a timeline." She paused, lowering her voice a notch. "Your quick thinking prevented another tragedy today." The station hadn't even flagged him yet. Relief and pride bubbled in Liam's chest, but he forced it down. "I'm just glad I acted in time," he replied. He glanced back toward the platform, where uniformed officers were gently walking Emily toward her waiting parents. The prime suspect sat rigidly in the back of the squad car, wrists bound, head down. Detective Harper nodded. "All right, we'll need your statement, and possibly testimony, Corporal. If you have a moment, you can come with me to the command post in the station office." "I'll follow you," Liam agreed, offering one last glance at the suspect. The dirty denim jacket and rough hands that had tried to control 2 little girls now looked absurd, yet sinister, behind the police tape. He turned and followed Harper through the sliding doors into the station's makeshift command center. Inside, the station office had been transformed into a hub of activity. Officers on radios, maps tacked to walls, laptops open to real-time train schedules and CCTV scans. As he took a seat opposite the detective, Liam's phone buzzed with a single missed call, Karina's mother. He ignored it for now, focusing on the task at hand. Detective Harper slid a cup of coffee toward him. "You look like you need this." She gave him a compassionate half-smile. "We'll go through your report bit by bit, what you saw on the train, how she signaled you, the details of the classroom situation. Anything you recall may help us build a broader profile." Liam leaned over his notes. He described each moment in detail, emphasizing the child's distress signal, the man's possessive grip, and the uncanny resemblance between the subway encounter and the fluctuating darkness of Karina's drawings. Harper interjected only to clarify timestamps or descriptions, height estimations, gait patterns, how he had disguised himself. In minutes, their statements were consolidated into the official investigation log. When they finished, Harper gathered the pages. "You did an excellent job, Corporal. The more detail we have, the stronger the case against him, and the faster we can track any additional victims." She paused. "Are you all right?" "I will be," Liam replied, nodding. He stood and tucked his notebook into his pocket, just as the police radio crackled with new intel. Suspect transported to central booking ETA 5 minutes. Surveillance analysis shows 2 possible sightings at 8:15 a.m. and 8:47 a.m. near Lincoln Station. The dispatcher's voice trailed off. Harper turned to Liam. "We're coordinating with those precincts now. If you're free, you could ride with us back to Lincoln to see if any officers there need your input. But you also promised to check on Karina and her mother." Liam glanced at his watch. 8:32 a.m. He exhaled slowly. "I'll head back to Westfield first," he said. "Then I can go wherever you need me next." Harper nodded approvingly. "Good plan. You just saved 2 kids today. Take a moment for the 3rd. As Liam left the office, he paused to collect himself. The station noises faded behind him, replaced by the distant wail of sirens. He dialed the missed call. Karina's mother answered on the 2nd ring, her voice thick with gratitude. "Mrs. Peterson," Liam began gently. "This is Lance Corporal Liam Carter. I'm at Westfield Elementary. I just wanted to let you know your daughter is safe and the suspect is in custody. Please come to the main office whenever you can." There was a moment of silence, then tears and relief poured through the line. "Thank you, Liam. Thank you so much. I'm on my way. Liam ended the call and made his way through the station's echoing corridors to the exit. Outside, the morning sun had burned away the mist, and parents now lined the sidewalk with anxious expressions. He hurried to the school and slipped back inside. In the main office, Mrs. Peterson stood hugging Karina tightly as Miss Casey and another officer filled out paperwork. When Liam entered, Mrs. Peterson looked up, eyes red but shining. She rushed toward him. "I don't know how to repay you," she said, voice trembling. "You don't have to," Liam replied softly. "Just promise me you'll have someone accompany Karina on the subway from now on." Mrs. Peterson wiped her eyes. "Absolutely. I swear I will. I'll get her a chaperone, or bring her myself every morning." She turned to Karina. "Sweetheart, I'm so sorry." Karina, clutching the notepad Liam had given her, managed a small nod. Liam bent down. "Karina, from now on, whenever you feel scared, you show this card," he said, touching the paper in her hand. "Or find any adult in uniform or with a badge and tell them your story." She offered him a tentative smile. "Thank you, Liam." He straightened, glancing at his watch. 9:02 a.m. He was hours late for his duty report. Yet as he watched mother and daughter walk out arm in arm, with Karina's backpack slung safely over her shoulders, he felt a deep calm. Duty called him back to base, but for this morning, he had answered a higher call, safeguarding the vulnerable, no matter the hour or uniform. With a final nod to Miss Casey and a wave to Mrs. Peterson, Liam Carter stepped back into the bustle of the city, ready to continue serving, and forever alert to the quiet signals of those in need. He used to say that a Marine's duty never ends, even off the battlefield, Jocelyn finished, voice trembling but proud. Liam's heart skipped. The coincidence struck him like cold water. This little girl's real father had walked the same path he did, worn the same uniform. He felt a surge of kinship, not just as a protector, but as part of a shared legacy. "He used to tell me," Jocelyn continued, brushing a tear from Karina's cheek, "that whether you're on deck or on a subway platform, you answer the call to defend those who cannot defend themselves." I never understood how much those words meant, until now. Her gaze met Liam's, gratitude and sorrow mingling in her eyes. Liam swallowed, emotion tightening his throat. "Ma'am, your husband was right," he said softly. "Service doesn't stop when you hang up your dress blues. It's in every act of courage, every time you stand between danger and the innocent." He glanced down at Karina, who clung to her mother, the tremors in her frame eased by the warmth of their embrace. Miss Casey stepped forward, offering a gentle nod to Liam before addressing Jocelyn. "We've secured all the paperwork," she said. "Once you've had a moment to settle with Karina, the detective will meet with you here to take your formal statement." She offered Karina a reassuring smile. "And if you ever need to talk, my door is always open." Jocelyn squeezed Karina's hand. "Thank you both," she said, voice steadier. I don't know how to thank you sufficiently." She looked at Liam. "Your name, your rank, it means more than I can say." Liam inclined his head. "Lance Corporal Carter," he replied. "But you can call me Liam." Karina's blue eyes lit with curiosity. "Like my dad," she whispered. Liam nodded. He knelt beside her, brushing a lock of hair behind her ear. "Just like him," he agreed. "And I'll stay until you're both safe and sound." In that moment, the classroom felt less like a schoolroom and more like a sanctuary. The sunlight filtered through the blinds, catching motes of dust that drifted lazily in the air. Outside, the wail of sirens had faded to a steady backdrop of normalcy, returning to the neighborhood. Jocelyn took a deep breath. "I'm going to take a few days off work," she said firmly. "We need to be together, rebuild our routine, without strangers on the subway." Her resolve was clear. Her priorities had shifted. Karina nodded vigorously, relief shining in her expression. Liam stood, brushing lint from his uniform. "Sounds like a good plan," he agreed. "And if you ever need help, anytime, just reach out." He reached into his pocket and produced a small laminated card, his contact information and instructions for whom to call if Karina ever felt unsafe again. "Keep this," he said, handing it to Jocelyn, "and one for you, Karina." He gave the second card to her, and she tucked it into her backpack pocket. Jocelyn clutched the cards like precious talismans. "Thank you," she whispered, tears shining anew. "Thank you." Liam offered a final salute, more gesture than formality, and then turned toward the door. Miss Casey gave him a small wave of encouragement as he stepped into the corridor. Detective Harper and 2 officers waited just outside. Harper nodded in greeting. "Ready when you are, Corporal." She gestured toward the exit. "The station's waiting." Liam straightened, shoulders squared. He paused at the threshold, glancing back once more at Karina and her mother, reunited and safe. "Take care of each other," he called softly, then stepped into the hallway. As he walked down the quiet school corridor, the morning's chaos felt slightly distant, yet its impact remained vivid in every fiber of his being. He had honored his comrade's memory, upheld his father's legacy, and fulfilled his oath to protect. Now, as he made his way to give his formal statement, he carried with him the quiet confidence that a Marine's duty truly never ends, and that on that misty morning he had answered that call in the way that mattered most. It looks like you've added the final act of Liam's story, tying up his return to base and the deeper significance of his actions. Would you like me to polish and tighten this section, ensuring it flows seamlessly and feels compelling for your YouTube audience while keeping the meaning intact? Or is there another adjustment you had in mind?